She was only 8 years old, carrying the last sandwich her family had saved for dinner. On a cold sidewalk, she saw a starving stranger shaking from hunger, and without hesitation, she placed it in his hands. She thought kindness would end there. But the very next morning, dozens of police officers stood silently outside her small home, their cars lining the street. Neighbors watched in fear. Her mother froze at the door. Why would law enforcement come for a little girl whose only crime was compassion? 8-year-old Maya Thompson lived with her mother in a small apartment on the edge of town, where every dollar had a purpose and nothing was wasted. Their kitchen was modest, their lights were sometimes dim, but their home was filled with something many richer houses never had: kindness. Maya had learned early that struggle could make people hard or it could make them gentle. Her mother chose gentle and Maya followed her example. Every morning before school, Maya helped fold blankets, packed her worn backpack, and asked questions about the world that adults often avoided. Why did some people sleep outside? Why did neighbors lock their doors when certain families walked by? Why did her mother's smile disappear whenever police cars rolled slowly through their block? She was young, but she noticed everything. Their neighborhood had long carried a reputation it did not deserve. People from other parts of the city called it dangerous, broken, and hopeless. But Maya knew it as the place where grandmothers shared food, strangers checked on each other, and children played under cracked streetlights until sunset. Still, she also knew that some people only saw the color of the families who lived there. That evening, her mother had saved one sandwich for dinner, the last bread in the house until payday. Maya held it carefully as they walked home from the corner store. Then she saw a man sitting against a wall, thin, trembling, and too weak to ask for help. His eyes met hers for only a second, but it was enough. Maya made a choice that felt small in the moment. By sunrise, their quiet street would be blocked by police cars, neighbors would gather at their windows. And the little girl everyone knew for kindness would become the center of something no one expected. When Maya placed the sandwich into the stranger's hands, she expected nothing in return. The man's fingers trembled as he accepted it. His eyes filled with tears he seemed too exhausted to hide. Maya simply smiled and walked away beside her mother, believing the moment would disappear into the night like so many acts of kindness no one ever sees. But someone had seen it. Across the street, a woman standing beside a parked car had watched everything. She stared at Maya, then at the man, then pulled out her phone, her face twisted with disgust, not concern. She spoke quickly, pointing toward the sidewalk, her voice sharp enough to make nearby people turn. Maya's mother felt it immediately, that familiar tension that arrives before trouble does. She grabbed Maya's hand and hurried home. By the time they reached their apartment building, 2 police cruisers were already moving slowly through the block. Inside, Maya asked innocent questions. Had the man liked the sandwich? Would he be okay? Why were police outside? Her mother gave soft answers, but fear had already settled in her chest. She knew how fast stories changed when told about people like them. A hungry man becomes a threat. A black child becomes suspicious. Kindness becomes something twisted into blame. The next morning, sirens shattered the quiet. Maya rushed to the window and froze. Police cars lined the street bumper to bumper. Officers stood on the sidewalk near the stairs beside the door, scanning the building as neighbors peeked through curtains. Some people whispered, others recorded on their phones. Maya's mother stepped in front of her, trying to shield her from the sight. Then came the pounding knock, not a polite tap, not a simple request, a forceful knock that made the thin walls shake. Maya's mother opened the door carefully, hands visible, voice steady. Several officers stood there, their expressions unreadable. One asked for Maya by name, by name. Her mother's face drained of color. How did they know her daughter's name? Maya clutched the edge of the hallway wall, too frightened to move. She had never seen so many uniforms focused on one tiny apartment. Neighbors stared as if danger lived inside. In seconds, the whole block had accepted the same silent assumption. Something bad must have happened. Because when police come to homes in neighborhoods like this, people don't expect good news. An officer asked if Maya had contact with a man the night before. Another wrote notes before anyone answered. A third looked past her mother into the apartment as though searching for evidence. Maya's mother explained what happened: the sandwich, the hungry stranger, the walk home. But suspicion lingered in the air like smoke. Then one officer said something that made her blood run cold. They believed Maya may have been involved in a robbery. A robbery. The room spun. Maya was 8 years old. She had given away her own dinner, yet somehow by morning she had become a suspect. Her mother demanded to know who made such a claim. No one answered directly. They only repeated that a report had been filed and an investigation was underway. Outside, more neighbors gathered. Phones were raised higher, whispers spread faster than truth ever could, and just when it seemed things could not get worse, a black SUV pulled onto the street. The starving stranger stepped out. Every officer on the street turned toward the black SUV. Neighbors fell silent, phones stayed raised, capturing every second. Maya's mother pulled her daughter close, bracing for whatever would come next. The man stepped out slowly, no longer shaking, no longer weak. He wore a clean suit, polished shoes, and carried himself with quiet authority. The same stranger who had sat starving on the sidewalk now looked like someone the city listened to. Gasps spread through the crowd. He walked past the officers and stopped directly in front of Maya. Then he knelt to her height. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at the little girl who had handed him her last meal when no one else would even look his way. In a trembling voice, he thanked her. Not for the sandwich alone, but for treating him like a human being when the world had chosen not to. The street stood frozen. He then turned to the officers and asked one question that cut through the silence like thunder. Why was a child being treated like a criminal for an act of kindness? No one answered. He revealed who he was, the owner of one of the largest companies in the city, a man known for quietly funding shelters, schools, and food programs. The night before, he had gone into the streets anonymously after hearing complaints that homeless people were being ignored and profiled. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. And he had seen it. People passed him without care. Some mocked him. One woman called police the moment a black child approached him, assuming theft, danger, or deceit. By morning, that false story had grown into flashing lights, uniforms, and public humiliation for an 8-year-old girl. The officers lowered their eyes. The crowd that had watched in suspicion now watched in shame. Then the man did something no one expected. He took Maya's small hand, turned to the cameras, and said the city needed to see what courage really looked like, because the smallest person on that street had shown the greatest humanity. The police cars left one by one, their flashing lights fading from the street that had nearly branded a child as guilty. The crowd slowly dispersed, but nothing about that morning felt ordinary anymore. Maya stood on the sidewalk, still holding her mother's hand, trying to understand how giving away a sandwich had brought fear to her front door. Before he left, the businessman made sure Maya and her mother would never struggle alone again. He covered their rent, funded Maya's education, and invested in the neighborhood that so many had dismissed for years. A food pantry opened just blocks away. Jobs were created. Families who had long been ignored were finally seen. But the greatest change could not be measured in money. People in the city began talking about what had really happened, not the false report. Not the rumors, the truth, how quickly kindness from a black child had been turned into suspicion. How easily people believed danger lived in her skin before innocence lived in her heart. How a lie moved faster than compassion because prejudice had already prepared the road. Maya returned to school days later carrying more than books. She carried the knowledge that the world could be unfair, but also that courage can expose it. She was still the same gentle little girl, but now an entire city knew her name for the right reason. Stories like Maya's are painful because they are believable. That is what makes them powerful. Too many children learn early that they can be judged before they are known, feared before they are heard, accused before they are understood. So the question is not whether racism still exists. The question is this: when the next Maya appears in front of us, will we choose suspicion or humanity? If this story moved you, share it, start the conversation. Because silence is how injustice survives.